Okay, we came out of non-public session, and at what time?
At
6:29.
6:28.
6:28. Got it. Thank you so much. All right, continuing forward on to the principal's report.
Nominations.
Oh, just kidding, the nominations. That's right, because I was missing my pen to move them around. Andy, nominations, resignations, retirements, correspondence.
That is for you when we get there.
Yep, thank you.
All right. First of all, I have a retirement. Dear school board members, it is my desire to retire at the end of the school year. It has been a pleasure teaching at HPS for the last 24 years. I will miss the amazing staff and most of all the students. And that's from Mary Jo Neighbor, and she sends her warm regards.
Just make my motion now.
If you could make that.
Okay. I move to accept the retirement of Mary Jo Neighbor at the end of the 2023-24 school year, and to approve the retirement benefit of $22,076.50 be included in the FY24 operating budget. This sum representing the earned retirement benefits outlined in the collective bargaining agreement. I'll take a second. Rafi. Any discussion?
I just want to say I think we should all just be very grateful for her service, and we're just very happy that she was with us for 24 years. That's really impressive.
Yep.
She's a lovely person, and I hope that she enjoys her retirement.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor? 500.
And lastly, I have a nomination. I'm nominating Bethany Beck for a sixth grade position at Hughes. She has her bachelor's in elementary education from Miami University, and she has her master's in education of the handicapped from Grand Canyon University. She'll be joining the Hollis District at master's step 15 at a salary of $79,579. If you recognize the name, it's because she's joining us from the cooperative school district. Cool. 79,579.
I know, I was like, did I miss cents? Can I get a motion to accept the nomination of Bethany Beck for sixth grade teacher, master's step 15 for a salary of $79,579?
Just say yes, as moved.
Any seconds?
Second.
Rafi? All those in favor? 500. We welcome Bethany to the team.
Yep, thank you very much. And that's it for nominations, resignations, retirements, and correspondence.
Excellent. All right, and now we're on to the principal's report.
Correct. First, Paula and Candy extend their apologies with being away last week. They had it done, just forgot to hit send, so it didn't make it in the board packet.
Who hasn't done that?
Yep. So I walked it in, you have a copy. I'm just going to highlight a few things. The April 29th to May 3rd is the New Hampshire SAS testing for grade 3. The DARE promotion ceremony for grade 6 students will be May 2nd. The May 6th through the 10th will be the New Hampshire SAS testing for grades 4 through 6. And May 6th to the 10th will be Math Week, as well as Staff Appreciation Week. Over the break, rooms in the common areas were deep cleaned, and landscaping for spring is underway, and the grounds look great.
All those
After the
flowers
cleanup.
all those bulbs they planted last
Yeah.
year popped up everywhere.
Yeah,
They look awesome.
looks really good. As some of you just saw, the main hallway flooring was replaced here over vacation. I'd like to thank Lance and his crew for getting that done quickly over the vacation week. One thing you'll learn as board members, 10 weeks during the summer is not a lot of time to get everything done. So we have to use vacation weeks and sometimes even second shift to get some projects done. And Paula is getting ready to order new furniture for grade 2. That was in this year's budget, and she is very excited about that. The grade 3 students are gearing up for the end of the year concert, and they have an after-school art show, book fair, and math fun that was very well received. At Hughes, the annual talent show raised over $4,200, and it's just been couple of great weeks that led up to vacation. Very, very positive. We're excited to get hopefully some little better weather, because then we really start to see the energy level of the students accelerate. But it's absolutely a fun time of year. This is the time of year where I feel very fortunate because my office looks out onto the field at the SAU where we do gym classes and recess and all that. And it makes me laugh. I'll watch for 5 or 10 minutes, and some of the things that go on, it's just like bring back a lot of good memories from my parenting days, and just it's quite enjoyable. So we feel very fortunate to have the children so close to us that we can walk over to either one of the Hollis schools and get away from some of the stuff we'd like to get away from.
All right, Andy, how many of their games have you joined in on?
I have not joined in, but I do critique the soccer games at times.
He's blowing his whistle out a window.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I think we sometimes forget the value of play and how much problem solving goes on. And when you do watch the soccer game that takes place and there's a disagreement or a rule violation and no adults step in, it's amazing how the kids will solve it, and solve it in a way just to, let's get back to playing. So there's a lot of benefits to recess, which I know we have worked hard to maintain in our districts, that playtime, because it's so critical for that relationship building. And we really see it come to reality out there in the playground. So that's it for the principals' reports, and they both promise me they'll get right back on their schedule, and it'll be in the board packet.
They're all right. They're all right. Excellent. Do we want to touch on anything on the other side, the enrollment report
Enrollment
at all?
it has stayed steady,
Okay.
and we're going to give kind of the 30,000-foot overview of the enrollment committee.
Perfect.
Ann will do a brief update, and we'll fill in any details that anybody has any questions on.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks to Candy and Paula. All right, we are now moving into public input. It is 6:38. We're going to open those doors. I know that our agenda mentions that it starts at 7 and ends at 7:30. We don't have any members of the public here right now who wish to speak. If anybody does show up in the next 30 plus minutes, we're happy to allow that, but we'll leave that open as of right now. And now we'll move into our discussion point. I believe our first item is the suicide prevention plan. We've got Lauren DeGennaro here to walk us through.
Okay, we're just plugging in, so it will be on the screen, which will be streamed live, I think directly to the live stream, so you don't have to move too much unless you want to see it. It's not loading. Do I have to do anything else? I'm sorry. This is why I don't teach technology. So you'll have in your packet, the updated presentation that I just shared with you, and then you'll have the suicide prevention plan. So I'll be referring to this document throughout the presentation for your reference. Okay, so good evening. So this presentation will provide an overview of our suicide prevention and response plan. This suicide prevention and response plan is reviewed and approved by the board at a minimum every 2 years. So we would logistically be doing this again in 2026, but we do retain the right to review it sooner if we feel tweaks and changes need to be made. So the framework of our suicide prevention and response plan comes from RSA 193J. This went into effect in July 2020. Even without this RSA, students' social and emotional needs and well-being are always at the forefront of what we do, and we keep that in mind. In order to create this plan, we use the 4 elements that our practices need to address per the RSA that you'll see up here: annual training, education for students, crisis prevention resources, and partnerships with community organizations. Educating staff begins at the start of each new academic year. The school counselor reviews the building safety protocol with the staff. The staff learns when and how to follow the protocol. The protocol that I'm referring to is this protocol that's in the prevention plan packet. In alignment with RSA 193J, staff are trained annually as well for a 2-hour suicide prevention training, and this we either conduct through NAMI Connect, where we have our staff are the trainers, or our vector training, K through 12 edition, youth suicide awareness prevention and postvention. Both of those.
Pardon me, Lauren, for those folks who are not familiar with what NAMI stands for, can you please?
Yes, and I do not
The National Association
National
of
Association of
Mental
Mental
Illness,
Institute.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the staff, have a copy of this in their classrooms, in their desks, this protocol. We all must be aware of potential warning signs, therefore this chart is distributed every single year to the staff.
May I ask-
This is one piece.
I apologize.
That's okay.
The vector training, is that the same training or similar to the training that we do when we are like becoming volunteers? Okay.
Yep, like the safety,
to our-
like all the safety videos, so those are annual
Okay.
videos. So this is a piece of our process that we've really focused on, really in enhancing and working on for the training piece. This suicide prevention plan and protocol, we've decided as elementary school counselors to meet at a minimum quarterly to make sure that we're reviewing trends, needs across the elementary school level, and to really address this in a thoughtful way to make sure that we're meeting the students' needs and following a protocol that makes sense with this developmental age level.
Are you
So
doing that
that's
district, cross
Yep.
district, so like SAU
Yep, elementary and
together?
school, yeah,
Okay.
so both elementaries, because every counselor is alone in each building. So we felt that it's very beneficial for us to meet kind of as a PLC of sorts to make sure that we're tackling things. We've also invited the school psychologists at least twice a year to those meetings. So we bring everyone together and we follow this. In addition, we've started this year going through this training at leadership with the principals. So I review this with the principals across the SAU specifically also, in addition to what the school counselors will be doing with staff. So we're really trying to beef up just how we approach the training and the review of this process across the board. A key component to student well-being is positive relationships and engagement. Adults in the building really work to foster strong relationships with the students and positive relationships in the building. The schools, both schools use MTSS, which is a multi-tiered system of support, meetings to give the staff time to talk about student needs, individual student concerns, get input from a variety of stakeholders. There's a lot of members from the school staff that are part of those meetings. You could have different specialists, you could have classroom teachers, school counselors, et cetera. And this practice really supports a whole holistic view of student support. So keeping in mind, looking at prevention, we look at student education being just as important as staff education. Our school counselors and our staff make sure to work with students each year. Lesson plans and curriculum include themes such as friendship, mindfulness, anger management, and problem solving, challenging negative thoughts, among others. There's research, that really speaks to building community within your school buildings. Both buildings really work to promote a positive school climate and culture. They do this through assemblies, through theme days, in their morning announcements. They really build it in throughout their school day, both from a building-wide perspective and then in individual classrooms. We are continually working on compiling resources to be available to families. I'll show you later in the slide where we have updated community resources on the website, and I'll show that to you. There's also, as part of this paperwork, you're going to see the forms in this packet. We have a page of resources that are available to families and students regarding different outside resources and agencies for safety. This is just a kind of a visual of how we frame Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 prevention. So again, at that Tier 1 level, that's what we're looking at across the building and in our classrooms. It really starts there. So positive relationships, counseling presentations, after-school activities, any way to foster engagement and participation within the community setting. Tier 2, if we see students, and these are just examples, this is not a comprehensive list. So if we find that we are seeing students who require some extra check-ins, extra support, we'll put in some Tier 2 supports. These could include weekly, bi-weekly sessions with school counselors. It can include different settings for lunch or for how to kind of facilitate recess. There's a lot of different options, but that's Tier 2. Tier 3, we look at some more intensive supports, students who may need different school psychology services, Section 504 plans, IEP supports, done through different team models. Okay, So on the website, so if you go to either school, I just have the primary school up here as a screenshot, but it's on both. You'll see under the resources, there's a school counseling tab. And then if you click on the school counseling tab, you'll see the school counselors in each building, and they both appear on both. And you'll see the Hollis School District Suicide Prevention Plan link and safety prevention resources, and then a list of contacts there. And these will be updated as we work with different community partners and resources. So I'm going to go through what happens if a student expresses an intent to harm themselves, okay, and if the safety protocol needs to be followed. So this is an overview of the process, which is outlined in greater detail in this packet. So this is a lot more extensive if you want to read that, and I'll take any questions at the end as well. So if a comment is said or written in an assignment, the teachers and staff are instructed to take every single comment seriously, even if it sounds like it may be a joke. We want to make sure that we're following up with the student. So the student is never to be left alone. So either the teacher brings the student down to the school counselor, or the school counselor or an administrator is called to the location that the student is in. They sit down and they have a conversation with the student, and the school counselor administrator will talk through how the student is feeling. Parents are called. They're brought into the conversation to meet with the school counselor and the administrator, and then they make an appropriate decision about getting an outside evaluation or assessment based on the nature of what was said. Resources and phone numbers are provided to the family if the family does not currently work with an outside therapist or practitioner. And then the practitioners would provide a clearance to return back to school. This is just an example of a chart of different providers that a student may see if an evaluation is recommended. So you can go to a private therapist where oftentimes parents could reach out if they have their student working with a therapist and they can see them, whether it's virtual or in person. There are mobile crisis options where mobile crisis can go to the family's house, they can come here. There's different options regarding how those are done. There's a couple of options now in the state. And then the parents also can utilize emergency rooms, urgent cares, et cetera.
Is there, if a student happens to make a comment like that, then you use that process? Are there screening tools ever used with students around suicidality?
So we have guiding discussion points that we use and talk to students, but we don't provide that clearance and that risk assessment piece. That's not our purview here.
Okay.
Then once the student is cleared to return to school, there's a re-entry meeting that includes the school counselor, the administrator, the parent, and the student. And what they do is they talk about what does the child need to return back to school to feel safe and supported, and they talk through different options, which will often include some extra supports of check-ins and check-outs for the school day, different it'll vary depending on the student's needs. Depending on the severity of need, a referral may be made to Section 504 or special education process. If the student is working with an outside therapist, we will often present a release of information to parents to consider signing to have our school counselor be able to have a direct connection to the outside therapist so we can bridge that home to school support and strategies that will help that student be successful and feel safe and supported in school. So this process overall really is an important one. We have to support our students and our families through, anything our students are feeling or experiencing. As we move forward, we review this as a team consistently. If we feel that changes need to be made, we would come to the board again. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them as well.
Does anyone else have questions? I have a lot. Okay. If we could go to the plan. So first I want to say there's so much going on the prevention side. I just want to acknowledge, my daughter, my older one in particular, comes home and talks about things that the counselor does. And I think that there's so much going on that's positive at the school. The likelihood this has to be utilized is greatly diminished because of the culture here, and I just want to preface what I say with that, and I think that everybody here does a wonderful job with it. Just because of experience, I just want to go through some of the verbiage and just make sure we clear up any ambiguities, since when suicide ideation or intent does happen, emotions are high, and the clearer we are with what our plan is for our staff and definitely for the parents, probably don't get to watch this presentation and aren't thinking about this, so that it's 100% clear. So just starting on the first page, this is gonna sound so nitpicky, and I really apologize, but I was in the weeds with it, and JLDBB wants that on the same, like where this suicide prevention plan is, that the suicide prevention coordinator's contact information be provided. So if we look at, you got Kathleen Turner and you've got Jessica with all of their contact information. I was wondering if we could just, so it's very easy for the parent where your name is, Lauren, and maybe even they're right on this document, go ahead and just throw in that contact information. Then no one has to worry about it.
And by that same token, we could also add my information on the school counseling website under where those resources are, and the school counselor's contact information is already there.
That would
So
be
we can do that as
perfect.
well. Yep,
That would
absolutely.
be perfect. So
Thank
that
you.
takes that right off the plate and makes it very easy. It's also supposed to be on the SAU 41 site, and on the SAU 41 site right now, it's only the co-op one that's up. Can we put ours up as well?
So it is under the family portal, under resources also, and if you click, it'll take you to both places. This protocol with the updated forms and such is not on the Hollis District website, the old one is. So just so you know, because you have to approve this one tonight, so then this one
Okay.
will be uploaded right after this meeting, or tomorrow morning.
Okay.
This one will be switched over.
Great. For some reason, I couldn't find it when I went to the SAU 41 website. Let me just pull it up really cute.
You have to go to the family portal. I mean, if I can unplug, I mean, we can.
Okay, so the family portal.
Under resources, I believe.
So resources and board meetings on demand.
Like straight from
not
the
seeing
SAU 41
that.
homepage, Lauren? Go to for families.
Family portal under documents and resources. It should be there.
Portal.
Which category would it be under?
Let me see.
Oh,
Can-
documents and resources.
I still want to share my screen if I
No,
can.
you're
Get out
totally
of this.
fine.
Let me just get on this.
Report card.
Currently looking at Andy's face with his superintendent's message on that same
Yes.
page.
Is it under student handbooks? Nope.
Are you under, oh, I see. So no, it's under our school district. Under Hughes
our
Family
district?
Portal. Oh, maybe it wasn't put, okay, so that was an error. It should be put here. So we will make sure that it's on the family portal, but you're saying the SAU 41, the over,
Yeah, so if
The
you go
overview?
to if you go to student services, there is suicide prevention plan, and what pops up is just the co-op one. And I was just thinking, since that's where the co-op one is, if we could just put ours there too. So if you go to the
thank
SAU
you.
41
I
site,
see what
yep.
you're saying, yes.
Does everyone else see too?
Yep.
So it's just
Yes,
a
absolutely.
formality,
Yep, we could do that.
just sometimes people want to see everybody's ducks in a row, and I don't want us to have to deal with things
I
like
actually think that
that.
was lost in the creation of the new website.
Yeah, I think it was,
It could
but
have
we
been.
will
It was
absolutely
been.
get that
It
done,
could have
yes.
been.
Well,
So-
I'm wondering, just because I do a lot of stuff like this, if you can have it live in one place and you link it.
Yes,
like
that's
have
what
it
Gina
show
was
up.
saying too, yeah.
Yeah, that way you're not trying to find the six
Correct.
places when we
Correct, yeah,
approve it again.
and that's what we'll do, thank
Cool,
you,
thank you.
got it.
Gina, you and I know it. That's
Yes, you guys are good at that, good.
So the next thing I wanted to ask about was with the protocol for staff. And I saw that this was NAMI. I tried to find this online. I can't find it online, but obviously it's from 2020, so maybe it's not up online anymore. But you have on the sheet here that you presented for us, the slides, that a parent is called, which is yes, it should be. Here it just says the counselor will contact the student's parents. Whereas on the right-hand side in the after-school hours, in point 4, it does say call the parents. But down here it just says
We do
will
always call,
contact.
but I will change it to call, but we do always call, we don't send an email, we always call. It's not just the contact, so I will make sure, I'm not sure that I'm seeing where that is though, wait.
The last box on the left-hand side, number 3.
I see, thank you, I got it, yep.
Another question I had was, and So, maybe this isn't necessary for the staff, but reading through it, it wasn't clear to me how we move from a level 1 concern to level 2. There, in the old packet, there was some sort of a risk assessment form. I didn't see it in this. I was just curious, how does, and is it the administrator or is it the counselor who determines a concern to a critical situation? What bridges those?
So as far as the student making a concerning comment, really any time a student makes a concerning comment or an action, they will follow the protocol. So it's not, I think that looking at the word critical, we think kind of like emergency, like we're calling, support services and such. I think that what we're saying is that we take every statement seriously. We're considering them critical situations to address immediately at that moment. So that's more what the definition is for.
I think she's asking
Yeah, help me.
what happened to the risk assessment itself. That you
So
didn't
the
have
forms are, if we want to get to the forms are slightly different. So the risk assessment, we never had like a formal quote risk assessment, and I wish I had the old forms on me. I can show you on the website. But what we did was we changed this form. So we are going to be still outlining the behaviors and the comments and the situation as it happens. That gets written in this statement. We'll often have to go on to the back. And such. And then the administrator, the school counselor, and the parents are deciding, based on the nature of the comments and what was said, whether they're gonna go out for a risk assessment or whether there's another option to not assess in that moment. And there's 2 different places to have that. The actual conversation that happens between the school counselor and the student, the administrator and the student, that we don't follow a checklist or a form because we're not conducting a risk assessment.
Okay.
So this is the documentation of the event and the decision. This is in your packet too, of the event and the
Trying to find
decision.
which one it is.
And then it's called the student safety checklist. So this is when the conversation's happening and the decision is being made.
I don't think the student safety checklist got connected.
It's in the middle of the packet. So the suicide prevention plan.
Yep.
If you scroll down that document, it's like right in the middle.
Oh, gotcha.
Of
So it's not the separate
Correct.
thing. Thank you.
correct. It's right.
Sorry, I was looking for a
No,
different
that's-
attachment.
No, that's totally fine. So then the other forms that you see here are the reentry meeting. Okay, so the reentry meeting is kind of gonna be a back-to-back form. So when the student is returning to school, this is indicating that they were seen. It has some clearance information on it. Then on the back, these are some guiding questions that they're gonna have as discussion about how we can support the students as they return to school. So that's what these 2 forms are, and it's a back-to-back form for the reentry. Then we just have an overall checklist for our staff, and this is an overall checklist for the protocol itself, so that we can kind of ensure that every step has been followed in the protocol, and we have that with the paperwork as well.
Just so you're aware, those actually aren't in ours, so I'm really happy to hear that they're there. They're just not all of them are in our packet, even in the middle.
They are if you go to, so I think we're getting confused by the attachments on our thing. If
Is
you
it a
go.
separate attachment?
No,
So I was
it's-
looking at them.
No, it's all
It's
part of the
right
same one.
in this plan, in this Hollis
Am I opening the wrong
School
one?
District Suicide Prevention Plan.
If you open the 3rd attachment in
Oh.
the thing, Hollis
Was the
School District
first one the
Suicide
old
Prevention
one?
Plan 2024.
So the
is the one
first
that
one
has
on
them
the
in it.
list, prevention plan website PDF, is that the current one and then there's a new one? Because there's 3 documents listed here.
Right, one's labeled website and one is labeled 2024.
Yeah, so is the 2024 new and the website, looks like it looks like I printed out from the website one.
Oh, yes. So what had happened was, because again, the one that's on the website is the older one until this one gets reviewed. So what we
Okay.
did is we took those forms, and really it was very beneficial to change how we were approaching those forms, because
Good.
those forms,
Okay.
our staff was reporting they were finding some of those pieces confusing. It wasn't aligning with how we were working with the outside, the resources on the outside. So that's when we really revamped those forms entirely, and that's what you see in this new one. So we should not be
This
paying
is-
attention to the website one, because that is the old one. I
And
apologize.
I apologize, that's what I printed out. Somehow I didn't realize there was another
you
one
want a fresh
here.
copy of the one that I am referring
That's
to?
great that you have it, thank you. Because it makes some of my comments, unnecessary then, as a result, which is really great.
While you read through, can I make a
Please.
quick ask?
Yes.
Not all of these comments are going to be made to a school staffer. If there's something that happens at home or a student says it, how does a family enter this process if they're dealing with it, the commentary made outside of school? Can they come to you and say, help me with this?
Absolutely. So
How does
they
that
can
work?
come to us, they can go to the school counselor, to the principal, and they can, ask, look, this happened, can you help? And we would, direct them and help connect them with outside community resources. We may address some of it in the school setting if needed. It'll be circumstantial, it'll be depending on the situation. But there's different options that we'd have.
And if a family has been dealing with a student who they've sought treatment for them outside of the school, would the school require the reentry meeting for safety purposes? Or is that truly only if you're wrapping the whole process?
So if it happened in school, then we do ask for clearance to come back, and we ask for
Okay.
for that clearance from their outside practitioner. If something happens in the home setting and they go and seek outside support, it's up to the parents if they want to share that with us.
Okay.
And then the similar process would be followed. If they want to connect us with that outside practitioner through a release, then we could again, speak with them and bridge that support. There's different options we have in that as well.
Okay. And just one, it's not part of this plan, obviously, but how often do the folks who are working on the suicide prevention and response connect with those that are maybe forming is not the right word, but in the bullying policies to make sure, do those have anything to do with each other? I only say that because we've heard, obviously, in the history of our community, that bullying has led to the need for a suicide response team intervention. So I'm wondering if there's are you on the lookout when something like that happens and stuff like that? I guess it has nothing to do with necessarily with the policy, but maybe of instances that have been happening.
Yep.
Do those trigger any of this?
So it doesn't necessarily, again, unless there's, an example of a statement or an action, or even if it's an off-the-cuff statement because the student is frustrated or upset from the bullying, there's different things. Then yes, we would enact this in any circumstance. I think that where the bullying and harassment and those pieces come in, they come into the prevention portion, right, where we're educating students about friendship and kindness and all of those components. If a student has experienced bullying or harassment, our school counselors do monitor those students, and we do kind of keep an extra eye and extra supports, and that's where that tiered level of supports come in. So I think it does wrap around to a certain extent. I don't know that we're tying policies together per se,
Yeah, I
but
think
we're
it-
definitely monitoring students and following trends and making sure that we're accounting for
Thank you.
different situations.
Sometimes when a person is struggling with suicidality, there's a certain, that it can be kind of chronic, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily a one-time thing. And so how does if it's a chronic thing that's happening on an ongoing basis, does the plan get activated every time?
Yes. So so when you look at this piece, especially with this form, so kind of keeping this documentation really helps us to track, again, how often is this occurring? What does this look like for a certain student? In those situations, we may develop kind of alternate plans for that student that doesn't require necessarily the same exact send out. Maybe we'll utilize some resources to bring in, or maybe we'll do different pieces. So it'll be student dependent, but we have addressed those in different ways if they become chronic.
Makes sense.
I know there was some confusion at one point about the idea of assessment, because I think that people have different understandings of what that means. So if we look right under where suicide intervention begins at B1, I can understand why a parent would be a little bit confused, because it says first that it's not the responsibility of an individual to assess whether or not the threats are of a serious nature. And then the situation will then be assessed according to the crisis intervention protocol, and then under no circumstance faculty and staff to provide counseling or risk assessment services. And then we come to the bottom, and we have if a student has expressed an intent to harm oneself, that an administrator will meet with the student and continue to follow the safety assessment protocol. I have no doubt in my mind you and your team know exactly what this means, but I can see why a parent, especially a parent who might be distraught at the news, be confused about no one can assess. The situation will be assessed. There is no risk assessment. We're going to assessment protocol. Is there a way, and I'm not saying I have the answer right now, but
No, I do, no, I
is there a way to
understand what you're saying.
clarify
Yeah.
some of
Yes.
this language maybe and come back to it another time so that it will be crystal for a very distraught parent?
Yes, and what that first sentence is referring to, and I can tighten up the language, is that our school personnel, our
Yes.
faculty and staff will not be conducting and are not able to conduct an assessment to determine whether the threats are not of a serious nature. And yes, we can change the word assessment at the end of this. So yes, I can tighten up the language and I can reshare.
Thank you. This is more detailed than it was, so I appreciate the work that's been done here. At E3, if we could just say to call the parent or guardian as opposed to contact, just again being crystal clear in the expectation that there needs to be verbal contact with someone in the family, so that there's no questions there. And then the only other thing was, so I looked up, suicide postvention should be 3 as opposed to 2. The term postvention, when I looked that up, and look, Jesse, you're a professional here. Like when I read about that, it was a specific term meant for how to handle coping with a successful suicide attempt, right? Like what happens after a suicide. But it seems like that's not what this is. I mean, it's necessary stuff. How does one return to school? What is the protocol for an attempt in the building? But I don't see what is our plan for if this were to happen, how do we move forward? And I saw some examples in some New Hampshire schools. Laconia is very, very thorough. But just coming through as to like sample letters to family, sample letters to the school, ways to, who would be contacted, what would happen as far as dealing with the people left. There are samples out there, and I'm wondering if that should be a part of it, because God forbid we are ever in this situation. We wouldn't want to be scrambling at that time for what to do.
So as far as this training and this protocol, postvention does have a different definition. It is the student returning back to the school environment, and that's described in those vector trainings, those other pieces. I do understand the definition that you're speaking of. We can decide whether we want, again, that is also, there's a lot of different factors and circumstances under which that could occur.
Sure.
So not every response is going to be the same in every instance, heaven forbid. And so, I wonder if we can have a general framework, but again, I'm not
Sure,
quite
yeah.
certain that this is the document that would belong in. I would defer to my colleagues. I mean,
Yeah, I
but-
would just say that we unfortunately have had to work through some of those situations, and we have a very tight internal collection of resources for families, for staff, sample letters, etc. But every circumstance is so different.
Sure.
And we have to take into all of those into consideration. But we don't have, we're not working from nothing. We do have a lot, and I don't know, I don't love the idea of those sample letters being
I'd be
put
hesitant.
out there.
No, I was just thinking
Yeah.
that's what I saw one school do,
Okay.
and I was just kind of curious as to. also specific to elementary school too. It's so rare. It's not, but I don't know. It just the term just confused me when I saw it, and then just seeing what other schools had, I just didn't know if that was something whether or not had been thought about or had been. I mean, not saying it hasn't been thought about, but didn't know if it was needed for the elementary schools.
I think it's something we can definitely look at. We have very clear protocols, as Gina has said, because unfortunately we've had this happen. But those instances have been at upper levels. So we can always reach out to some colleagues and see if there's material out there that's more suited for the elementary level.
And I would venture, and and I appreciate that. I appreciate all of your comments, and thank you very much. I do, from all of this.
Well, and thank you for
and-
putting all this together.
No, truly, I appreciate it. But I think that might even be kind of a separate, part of the website or document, or like wherever we decide to put it. I still don't believe it would be necessarily part of this process, because this is kind of an outlined process, again, through trainings and different things that we do. But we can definitely talk about that information and how we want to.
I think that almost fits into the crisis response
Right,
section.
sections, yeah.
Because there's much more to it than just to the child and the family and the things, and it's much broader for all of those.
Sure.
So I agree with you guys that it wouldn't fit with this. That's just my personal thought.
But action items, I'll definitely tighten up that language, put all the contact information, and make sure that all the appropriate links are all on the website from
Thank you
tonight.
very
Thank you.
Thank you. It's always such a tough topic every year.
It is, yes.
We love you, kids. All right. Do we have to take any action right now? We don't. We're gonna do that after, right? Any more discussion on this? Any more questions on this?
It'll be back next month, so Lauren will tighten it up, bring it back. Whenever we're talking about a significant document, we're trying to avoid having to vote the night that you get it. Because again, a lot of times your lens is different than ours, and we're so used to reading things, and it makes sense to us because we live in it, that it's very helpful to get that feedback of, well, as a parent or a distraught parent, I need it to be like right there, right in front of me, because I'm not going to be thinking clearly. So this is very appreciated. This is why we do it. And the nice part is for us, this document will go through this board, the Brookline board, and the co-op board, so 17 more sets of eyes get on it. And we usually end up in a really good place for kids. Yep.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you. Again, I'll echo the thanks of the membership. Our next category is the strategic plan draft.
Excellent. I wanted to just put this in your packet. It is more of an SAU discussion because the strategic plan, I look at it as the umbrella that all three districts function under. It helps us with budgeting, it helps us with curriculum, and a host of other topics. Where we started, it's either 2 or 3 years ago now, we did the portrait of a graduate. So we decided as three districts in the SAU to come together and decide what do we want a graduate to look like from Hollis Brookline High School. And then we intentionally worked our way back. So this is where we want to end up, what do we need to do? So that was the first document. And then last summer, we hired a consultant, Rick Bond. Some of you may recognize the name. Rick was our high school principal for many years, has got into a strategic plan. It's something I used to do in my past. I enjoy it. Gina is working closely with us, and the three of us started on this journey. So when you look at the document, you'll see it talks about 23 to 28. And it's because we're kind of capturing when we started and when we envision this plan ending. Now, to be honest with you, in education, because of budget constraints and different things like that, they very seldom end on time. So the strategic plan I came into was, I think, 2 years in, and it took us about 6 or 7 to get through that because we had a number of budget delays. But it really helps guide us to what our priorities are and what we do delay. So if we have to get to a certain number to meet the guidance provided by the budget committee, we're not sitting here and debating it. we know what the strategic plan tells us. So we're really trying to budget the plan as opposed to just make a budget. So, and I stay on the principles about this. It really shouldn't be something that they suggest in July for next year's budget that doesn't appear in some way, shape, or form in the strategic plan. Because it's got to be a priority to fund. So we started with a multitude of data gathering, using a bunch of our historical data. We did do a staff survey, so that was one of the places we started. Got staff information, what their thoughts were on all those pieces. The next steps, now that we have a draft that's before you, is Rick will coordinate some forums. Hopefully, we're looking at one potentially this spring, late spring, and one in the fall when people are thinking about school again. Because right now, parents are starting to, shut down their school mode and gear up for summer, and then all of a sudden in the fall, they'll ramp up again. There'll be, again, for those interested, because not all board members are really that interested in the strategic plan. Some like it, some use it as a framework, others live by it, so we take all points of view into account. So there'll be opportunities for those board members to weigh in with Rick. He can reach out either via email, schedule a call with you, and you can give your input. So if that's something that is kind of in your wheelhouse that you enjoy doing, let us know, and we'd be happy to arrange that. We'll be discussing it at the SAU board, and then the information we have, plus the way the year has gone, will allow us to tweak further this summer, and then bring it back to the SAU board, hopefully for adoption, and then we'll have 24-25 to 27-28 as our strategic plan. It tries to highlight the various components from successes of our staff, which we still need to fill in, to enrollment trends, because that's becoming a very big topic in all our districts. And then how do we manage facility needs with curriculum needs while maintaining that overall budget responsibility that the budget committee has come to expect from us. So tonight was more just 3 new board members, get it out to you before next week's SAU board. Some people are receiving it for the second time. And again, if it is your piece that you really enjoy doing that, please don't hesitate to reach out. But I don't want you to feel compelled, if it's not your thing, that you have to do that. Because each of us thinks differently. And that's the joy of being a teacher and trying to figure out how my room full of children all think. And not everybody is that logical, sequential. Some of us are random, abstract, and some of us live better in chaos. So we take that into account, and just let me know if there's something you would like to do, or if you'd like to be involved in it, because we typically will do subcommittees over the 5-year period, so that we're keeping it fresh, and we don't want it to be the document that we do, and then it goes on the shelf, and 5 years from now, the person dusts it off, and, oh, did we get anywhere? So we try to build everything we do. So next month, our principals will come and do a presentation to you, which is based on the presentation they did at the beginning of the year with their goals for the year. Their goals for the year are derived from the strategic plan. So they really shouldn't be coming with the goal to Gina or myself or to Lauren unless they've taken the time to make sure it's in the plan. So at the end of this year, if there's something they want added to the strategic plan, that's not a problem. But it just really demonstrates to the community that we've thoughtfully considered this, and yes, we believe it should be funded, or we believe it could be delayed because we can live with what we have, those type of things. And we go through a regular curriculum cycle that is based on the strategic plan, so we're not asking to fund 2 or 3 new programs at once, for 2 reasons. One, the budget component of that, but more importantly, the teacher. Because if you're an elementary teacher, you teach everything. So if I change reading and math and social studies in 1 year, I've kind of created chaos for you. So we really try to be formal about our adoptions. And we do, from an economical standpoint, try to combine with Brookline, because buying a math program for 1,200 students will be a lot cheaper than buying a math program for just one district. And Gina, if you don't know, is one of the best negotiators I know. And we get a lot of free stuff all of a sudden thrown in. And we're very appreciative of that. But again, it's because she has that bargaining power of representing multiple districts. And they also know that if we adopt this at the elementary level, very shortly, we're probably going to be back for an adoption at the co-op level. So they like the business, and we like the discounts. And that's,
shopping.
yes, it's the quest. Yeah. Any questions on the strategic plan? And again, if it is something you're interested in, please just send me an email. I have a group that is very interested in it. So don't worry, it gets actively reviewed. And you'll see that if you attend the SAU board meeting. That's it for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Our next item on the agenda is the Enrollment Committee update.
Well, we have had 2 meetings so far. Our first was in March and our second in April. We have one coming up next week on the 7th. During our first meeting, we toured HPS with Mrs. Bickey, and she highlighted some of the challenges that she has been dealing with for quite some time now, and that she's trying to navigate. The brunt of the pressure of this increased enrollment has been here. It's been at HPS. So we came up with, Mrs. Bickey and I had an opportunity to meet even before our first meeting just to kind of go through what she's been seeing. And so we together with the group came up with a list of the problems that we see coming forward based on enrollment projections, what's going to need to be addressed. And we prioritized, and of course we're focusing on our most immediate need, and that is finding 3 classrooms for the fall. We need 1 more preschool, we need another first grade class, and we need a 3rd grade classroom. We have different restrictions due to fire code, etc. Needs to be considered. So in April, we toured Hughes with Ms. Fowler, just to kind of see what their facilities are like, what the situation is there, and we had a killer brainstorm session where we just threw everything at the wall. And right now we are working on a shared document to kind of see some pro and contra for the different ideas that have been proposed. So next week we have agreed to do a 2-hour meeting, and we are going to try to solve the fall problem. That is our objective for the meeting, to figure out what we are going to do to get those 3 classrooms, and then we will be moving on to talk about how we address the cafetorium issue, the storage challenges that we have here, the office space. So it's a big job that we will be diving into as we continue. So.
And you said the cafetorium issue, meaning we can't fit the kids in there for lunch?
They're just busting at the seams. Shoot it at them through the windows. They basically, we have a large population of students. We have to feed our kindergarten, first, second, and 3rd grade, and there's not a place for PE. So all of these children need to be fed quickly, efficiently, and then we need to clean up and get PE classes going. That's also the same space that assemblies are conducted, and we are not fitting families in there very well anymore, once again, with all the people here. So we need to figure something out to provide a dedicated space for physical education, which is important. It would be wonderful if we had a dedicated space for assemblies, pie in the sky. But we are going to try and solve that problem so the cafeteria can be a cafeteria.
And for some of our new members, if you guys aren't familiar with it, or folks watching at home, there are rules about the floor of the building that pre-K, kindergarten, and first graders can be on. They have to be on the same level as egress. So you can't put a kindergarten classroom down on lower level or on the upper level. So that's some of the stuff that you're alluding to with where can you put them and still follow the protocol that's needed for their ages.
And we'll be consulting, and we've talked about having, guests come, such as the fire inspector and our facilities manager, to kind of help us with some of those issues. And we will be getting consulting for architectural designs and so forth.
So, Anne, right now, the enrollment committee is really focused on the immediate issue of next year we're short 3 classrooms.
Yes.
And then I assume after sort of problem solving that, then there's a broader examination of what do we do with rising enrollment.
Yes, so, I mean, really, by Tuesday next week, that's going to be answered for the fall. It has to be, because, of the options that we have, all of them require some sort of movement of materials, potentially teachers, equipment, things have to be done. People need to be employed to carry these things out over that very short 10-week period that Andy alluded to earlier. Once that is answered, because it has to be, then it comes down to, the next improvement. Problems that we tackle are going to be ones that require a budget approval, and so that's where the connection with the BudCom is so important. Because we will have to be planning strategically around that and keeping in mind the interests of our taxpayers, but also our students, making sure anything that we do is definitely going to be long-term, that we're going to get bang for our buck for this, etc. So lots on the agenda going forward.
In terms of just trying to get a gauge on the history of projections, so I was trying to look at like NASDAQ and how it worked, and so basically in the recent years were the projections from NASDAQ pretty far off from what ended up happening, and is that related to because of the methodology used in NASDAQ is more based on kids in the district and who's born in the district as opposed to like who's moving in, or
The NASDAQ has been relatively accurate. Where they struggle is we're a move-in community. It's housing permits and births and that are 2 very stable pieces that they have. But it used to be, when I started here, people were moving in for the co-op district. That has significantly changed to we are seeing children entering kindergarten and first grade that are the oldest in their family. So it's been a monumental swing. And then in between, what's happened is, as the board is aware, we have created a number of in-house special education programs to meet the needs of students, but those tend to occupy significant space because of the needs of those students. So, like when we took the tour, one of our, what would have been a classroom 15 years ago is occupational therapy. So it's got all that equipment for those students. And this is not a new problem for Paula. We've been juggling the last 3 or 4 years. And I think for the first time, I feel confident this is going to be a trend and not a bubble, because you get very concerned about doing something in terms of construction and then having space empty. Now, we're sitting in space, and this is what happens in education. If you went back many years ago, this would have been multiple classrooms. But as enrollment decreased, there's what I call creep. And creep is, we now have probably one of the largest elementary libraries for a K-3 that I can think of. So we may need to do some petitions here and capture back some space in the short term. There's also we'll discuss portables, we'll discuss construction, and I can assure you that Paula already has some thoughts. It may be short-term fix where a teacher may be on a cot again, which is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, it's sometimes what happens in schools. So we have a long way to go, but I can tell you, and I think Ann would echo this, it's been 2 very positive, exciting meetings, and I really do see a short-term and then a long-term ideas coming out of this.
How many members are on the enrollment committee and what factions are represented?
There are 9 of us, and so it's Pretty sure it's 9. We're gonna find
Think
out right
so.
now. So it's Andy and myself, obviously. We have a parent representative. We have a community representative. We have a representative from the BudCom. We have one of the teachers from the primary school. We have Mrs. Bicky, and then we have the head of the preschool program. Who am I forgetting?
Somebody from,
Principal from Cleveland?
No, she steps in, but it's really the issue is at the primary.
Yeah.
So I guess there are 8 of us.
okay.
I guess there are. Hold on. Wait, I got us all right here. Do. Oh, this Miss Sayer, the Hollis Primary School Secretary.
See, you did have
Did you
public
say
input.
that? I'm sorry.
But I'm not speaking.
My gosh, and she's so important too. She's
Yep.
our secretary, and she does an incredible job taking care of the minutes for us. So.
Is there like cohesion in the enrollment committee about like similar attitudes about what needs to happen, or is it too early yet to be there?
Well, right now, as I said, we just finished the brainstorming phase.
Yeah.
So I think we're really going to find out next week where everyone is. The document that we're all is a working document right now over Google, where we have all of those ideas, and pro and contra and questions. Right? There's a robust conversation happening right now. So I think that'll be very interesting when we come together. But I think that we're all of the mindset, thinking of this specific problem right now, this most immediate problem that must be solved. Is we want to obviously the least impact on students. Number one, of course, we don't want to be upsetting any teachers. We want to keep our teachers, and good teachers are happy teachers. So we don't want to upset anyone by disrupting their routines and with their comfort level too much. It needs to be feasible. We don't have anything in the budget for FY25 for this, so we have to be thoughtful for that. That's why also we need to start that next conversation as soon as possible, because something does need to get into the budget for next year, and we have to figure out what that's going to be. But yeah, I think we all have a common goal. We started our first meeting going around talking about why all of us wanted to be on the committee and what our thoughts were. We recorded that as a way to kind of just keep going back to these ideas of what is important to all these stakeholders and the different parts of our community that we all represent.
Awesome. So I think, and this is more of a question I think over to you guys. When we started this enrollment committee, I believe we said it would run till June of this year. Do we need to extend that? Question mark. And
Well-
if so, how would we do that?
My recommendation, because we just did it for the co-op facilities, we will come back in June and most likely have the short-term fix for the board to consider. Then we will ask the board to, again, extend the charge at that point to continue to work looking at the long-term fix. But that way we provide,
Action.
actions and dates. And the second committee would probably have to have recommendations by January to get the budget, as well as to be prepared for if you were to do a warrant article for annual meeting.
Yep.
With the board like for me next time to bring we have a problem solutions chart where we have the challenges that Mrs. Vicky and her team have been facing here, and then based on rationales based on enrollment and so forth. If everybody wants to see what are these issues that we're going to be tackling, I can bring that.
I'm happy to get that update on a monthly basis for right now. Yeah. If you can drop it somewhere in the packet where you guys
Yeah,
see
if you
fit.
wanna, if you send it, we'll just start putting it in the packet and kind of have it be a regular monthly agenda item, even if it's just to say, there was really no progress this month, whatever it may be. I think that would be very helpful.
Agree. Excellent. All right, thanks, Anne. I
Yep.
appreciate it. I am just going to officially call public input closed at 7:34. It's been a generous amount of time for our non-speakers tonight. Our next category on the agenda is deliberation, and our first item up is to see what action the board will take regarding the superintendent's recommendation regarding administrative recs and non-union personnel. happy to take a motion on this one.
I move to approve the superintendent's recommendations regarding administrative and non-union personnel.
Second? Michelle? Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? 500, motion carries. Our next one is to see what action the board will take regarding the committee appointments proposed by the board chair. Take a motion on this one.
I move to approve the appointments by the chair, as stated.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? 500, motion carries. Thank you again for all being willing to serve. They're fun things and ask lots of questions. I know I still do, ask them. Our next one is to see what action the board will take regarding ACN nursing mothers, third and adopt.
I move to accept the third reading and adopt policy ACN nursing mothers accommodations.
Second? Hands? Any discussion?
There have been no changes since our last meeting.
Perfect. Yeah, we did our second reading just to refresh. Our first reading was in January with our previous board members. Our second reading, of course, was last month with all of us. But if there's no other discussion, we can go ahead and put it to a vote. All those in favor? 500, motion carries. Our next is to see what action the board will take regarding JCA, change of school or assignment, best interest, and manifest hardship.
I move to accept the third reading and adopt policy JCA, change of school or assignment, best interest, and manifest hardship.
Second? Michelle? Any discussion?
Once again, since our last meeting, there have been no changes to the policy as written.
Yeah, we had a good conversation about it last time, so I think that's good. All right, no more discussion to be seen. All those in favor? 500, motion carries. Thank you. And our final point here is to see what action the board will take regarding JKAA, use of restraints and seclusion. It's the second reading.
I move to accept the second reading of policy JKAA, use of physical restraints and seclusion.
Is there a second? Jessica? Any discussion?
Yes, that's why I went. This is Gina's baby. Gina did a lot of work on this. But I did notice one thing that we talked about, one thing that I thought that we meant to change, we did, and we were supposed to replace child with student. That's it should be a minor thing, but it was something that was talked about with the last board. I just wanted to make sure that we did that. Gina is the person we want to ask these questions to. She did a lot of work on JKA.
So this is our new board member's first time seeing this one.
It's a hefty one.
What'd you say?
It's a hefty one.
And it's a hefty one. These comments that you guys saw in your outline came from our January meeting with our prior board members. So feel free to dig into any of those. This is the time to do so. Because when it comes back for the next time, it would likely be third and adopt unless we have greater changes. So if there are any discussion points, I encourage you to make them now.
And also, just so everybody's aware, so huge changes were made in the law, and so part of the reason why this was so much to work on is when we presented it to the board the first time, we were kind of debating between do we try and change what we have here and just kind of squish everything in, or do we just cross it all out and just give the sample policy? And we ended up just going with the latter. And so what is before you is the New Hampshire Association of School Boards sample policy, almost word for word. The only thing that had been asked to be changed was the word student as opposed to child. And that's pretty much it. So this does put us up to date, but it is a lengthy policy. I'm not sure if everybody got a chance to read it.
The law itself changed?
Correct.
Could someone just sort of like summarize that for me, what the change in the law was?
For the restraint and seclusion, so
Yeah.
it largely has to do with the seclusion portion, that change with what that definition is. So it's really identifying seclusion as when a student is left alone in a room and does not feel like they can leave the room for some reason. If they're told you have to stay, but there's no adult in there, let's say, as an example. And we don't practice seclusion. We don't practice, so this is not the norm at all, for us, but some of those pieces are very nuanced now with what seclusion means.
There were also some changes with restraint in terms of having co-regulators present and an additional adult, which we already had in our practice, but then it just wasn't articulated as well in our policy. But there was so much legalese involved in, with the changes to the law, and then also with the required forms that we have
That's what I
to
was just gonna say,
complete
the
with
forms.
any restraint, that it really made most sense to just overhaul the policy so that it was kind of word for word according to the form that we have to fill out anyway.
Correct, and the form now also includes seclusion, more in depth in the form as well.
And it sounds like you're referencing that we don't particularly use seclusion or restraints
Correct.
very often, if at all.
Correct.
Does that mean we don't use them very often, or we don't
So
end up using
we
them at
don't
all?
really use seclusion.
Yeah.
We do use restraints.
Sure.
Only by trained individuals, and it's, we really try to de-escalate first, but we have to restrain, but we don't do long restraints. We really,
Yeah, we have other strategies that we use first. I mean, it's an absolute last resort. So therefore, it does not happen really often at all. The percentage is very low per year. I couldn't even,
I think it's
Say
also
more.
important for parents at home who probably aren't looking at this. Like, there is a clear definition of seclusion and what isn't seclusion. So, like, having a child sit by themselves somewhere where the door is open and you can see them, and they could step out and walk out if they wanted to, even though they're not supposed to, because they need that like moment of zen. That's not seclusion. Seclusion is the door is closed, they can't get out, it's against their will. We don't
Correct.
do that with children. It would be an extreme case. So that's very clearly spelled out, because that could be ambiguous. So I think there are more definitions, if I remember, in this in general. We're
Yes.
going to see that with
clarifies.
next month's policy
Yes.
as well.
and I will say that a lot of this language, the changes in the law were based on non-public schools, but based on private settings, but it applies to all. So we follow the law and we update our policy, but it doesn't necessarily impact what we do.
And then just so you know, there's nothing that requires on the third reading that you have to adopt it. You can do multiple readings, or you could do first reading and adopt. So we typically do 3 because that gives the community notice over 3 different months. So if you didn't see it the first month on the agenda, maybe you'll pick it up the second month or the third month. And that allows them, if they did have input, to come and talk to us during public input. So I don't want you ever to feel that if you're not ready because one of the readings was done by the previous board and you want to go to a 4th reading, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you for clarifying that. It sounded like I was implying that this is your last chance. That was not what I was meaning. This is it. Very true. Very true. Yeah, and as she stated, it's a heavy policy because it's just a lot of detail, and as they've already talked about, it is so many more definitions. It's like lines of exactly what we mean by this type of restraint and this type of restraint and this seclusion and this thing. So it made it very long. I think you guys wiping it and putting the new one in was the best plan. It would have been hard to cobble that together.
and it is a very serious topic. This
Right.
is something we really want to put, we're very thoughtful about how we handle de-escalation in those pieces, so.
Absolutely. Is there any more discussion at this point? Okay. So just a reminder, the motion was to accept the second reading. That's all we're doing tonight. So we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the second reading of JKAA? Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay. I don't think there was anything else.
Favorite motion?
All right. I will take a non-debatable motion.
I move to adjourn.
Any seconds on that? Lawler? All those in favor? 500. Thank you so much. Meeting is adjourned at 7:45